Hello there, my name is John Coburn and I'm in front of my Toronto studio at Witchwood Barns here in Canada, where I draw and paint and watch flowers grow. A very special time with the 20th commemoration of September the 11th, just a month away now. Before I share some of my story, I want to share a few moments about why New York has been such a great friend, pal, inspiration. We'll do that in the studio. And here's my big apple for today. So, New York started really for me when I was 11 years old. This is the very first oil painting I ever did with oils, and it happens to be from a painting I did of the Statue of Liberty in New York with my family when I was 11 years old. Very first oil painting. Then when I was 17 at art school, we took a bus trip down, and on that bus trip, a little quieter, I borrowed my father's Super 8 camera, and on the bus trip down from Toronto to New York, I did a bunch of time lapse, and looking at it now from the late, I guess, 76, it's quite incredible to see the texture of New York and the vehicles and the architecture and the people, whatever that is, 40 years ago. And I immediately got moved on the energy, the people, the architecture. I was standing inside the Museum of Modern Art, started to cry staring at a painting because I realized that paintings are more than just pretty pictures. Whether it's 5 years old or 100 years old, when that artist was sitting there drawing and painting, that energy somehow sits in and is contained and is a document of that moment and energy of the time. And I realized that I would be an artist the rest of my life. On that trip, I even had a helicopter ride over the financial district and saw the majestic trade towers for the first time. Then I was commissioned to draw 50 best places to sleep and enjoy in New York City. A publisher named City and Company, Helene Silver is the publisher, created all these amazing books on 50 best places to wander and do things in New York. And so I went to all 50 of these hotels and just drew what inspired me. In 100-degree weather. The president at the time, Karen Putnam was the president of Central Park. She was charmed by my drawings and asked me to draw Central Park. I then did a book called, written by Eleanor Berman, who's a great New York travel writer and food writer, called New York Neighborhoods. And this is a book she wrote highlighting places to food shop in the 5 boroughs of New York. September the 11th happened. I couldn't watch it on TV anymore. I had to go down to New York to feel the pain firsthand. And so I went down to Chambers Street, about 10 blocks north of the site, and it was all cordoned off with army and police, and you can imagine. And suddenly a partition opened, and these 5 construction guys walked out, and as they walked out, I walked in, and the door slammed behind me. And I thought, I guess I'm meant to continue this journey, and I went 10 blocks through empty canyons and found myself at ground zero. And as surreal as it was, I sat down with my folding chair and started to draw. And about 20 minutes later, a police officer came around the corner and said, "Don't want to hear it, don't want to hear it, leave, you have to leave." And out of my bag, I pulled a photocopy I had drawn of the trade towers around 1998, and I said, I don't know why, but this is a journey I had to take. And he looked at the drawing and he could barely speak, and he said, you do what you need to do, and walked away. That's started a journey that's 20 years later right now. I was then invited inside St. Paul's Chapel, the sanctuary where they fed people, and people could sleep in the pews upstairs, massage, you name it. And one night in there, a chaplain once said to me, Thomas Taylor, he said, you know, I see people relating to your drawings. Maybe in some little way those drawings could deal with the theme of healing. And that was extremely moving to think little drawings might be able to help a little bit. So I said I needed to meet somebody directly that has lost a family member and ask them. He brought me down to a big Salvation Army tent, which is nicknamed the Taj Mahal because it was so huge, where they used as a recovery unit at Ground Zero. And he introduced me to a woman named Rosemary Kane, who had lost her son, a firefighter son, 34 years old. I said to Rosemary, I said, if I'm able to put these drawings into a book and send it out to the families, would you even want to receive it? And she handed me this photograph and said, if your little book can help 4 people remember my son George, I think it's worthwhile. That one sentence is the only way this book ever got done. That day I met Mary Fetchett, and she gave me a photograph of her son Bradley, who was 20 years old that day. Bradley was an equity trader at the time. This book was designed with the help of about 400 people. Brian Chadwick, who's a Canadian New Yorker, who's been down there for 40 years, wrote the foreword in the book. And I will read you a couple of sentences here. In Canada, one fellow dropped what he was doing and headed for New York. Like so many of us, he joined the pilgrimage to Lower Manhattan. Some brought candles, some brought garlands, some brought love notes. Poems, flowers, and photos. He brought his sketch pad. He didn't know why. He just felt compelled to draw all those things he was seeing and feeling. Those same things we're all still having trouble putting into words. So, 20 years later, it's still raw. And then about 5 years later, I got a phone call at 4 in the morning that my studio in Toronto, obviously not here, but further north here in Toronto, was on fire, and everything was gone. Everything was gone. All my originals of this project were in the building, and I showed the fire chief that night. I said, the most important work I've ever done is there. He said, come back the next day. And I did, and a construction guy walked out of the pit. This black soot opened up. All the drawings, all now burned around the edges and water stained, but intact. And as one family member later once said, it was like those drawings were so soaked in emotion they couldn't burn. 20 years later, how do we feel about healing now? There is no answer. As one minister said, is that healing can take a lifetime, and sometimes it feels better and sometimes it doesn't. You have to believe in your soul that each day you heal a little bit more. And when all I know is, after being an artist all my life, and people walk up to me and say, I wish I could draw, I wish I could paint, I say, sit down and take 5 minutes alone. In a park, on the street, in your room, wherever, but be alone. Give thanks for a few minutes, and then sit down and write the poem that you wanted to write. Paint the tree you wanted to paint. Paint the bench you wanted to paint. Just do something for yourself and be quiet and let that energy of love come in from the skies above. My love to all of you on this anniversary around the world, and God bless. I'd like to thank the 400 people over the last 20 years that have made this project possible, and it's a real honor to be sharing this exhibition this anniversary. I'd like to thank Beckett Fine Art, Tom Beckett, for being with me the whole journey. I'd also like to thank Mary Fetchett of Voices of Resilience and the exhibition at Silver Mines Arts Center in Connecticut, and the show Voices of Reflection. God bless you all.